Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Kristen Donnelly, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research. At Abbey Research, we believe in cultivating curiosity as often as possible because we believe it is the only thing that truly has ever changed the world. And changing the world is one of our main mantras because I think we can all agree it constantly needs changing. And we also all need to learn to get along a little bit better, not in a campfire song kind of way, but in a doing the actual work to understand and know each other better. And that's a huge part of this series. It's called Welcome to My World. And I get a really amazing opportunity to chat to fascinating folks from all walks of life about something important to them, something that they know that the rest of us don't. So we get a small picture into their world. And today is absolutely no exception. I get to talk to somebody who I met in a speaker organization called Innovation Women that is a wonderful, wonderful resource that I've gotten a chance to talk to several times now, and I'm really excited to feature her here on the podcast. Orly Zeewy is a published author, which is what we will be getting to in a couple seconds, but let me also read you the rest of her incredible bio really briefly. She's got 30 plus years of experience in design, marketing, communication, and brand strategy. Before starting her consulting practice, she ran a communications firm, which had a lot of national clients. She's led workshops all over the place. She's lectured at Wharton. She's taught at the Close School of Entrepreneurship at Drexel University, the Park School of Communications at Ithaca, and at the University of Pennsylvania. She currently teaches at Jefferson University. She grew up in Switzerland and is bilingual in French and English, holds an MBA from Jefferson, another degree from the Cincinnati College of Design, Architecture, and Art, which is one of the most prestigious design programs in the US. I love that. And her book, Ready, Launch, Brand, The Lean Marketing Guide for Startups, was just published by Routledge, which is what we'll be talking about first. Orly, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Kristen. Looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, such a delight. So let's start with the main thing. Tell me about your book.
So my book was, a real passion project. I started actually when I was getting my MBA program. I'd been thinking about writing a book for a long time. And what I realized is that, no one is really speaking directly to startup founders in those very early stages of building their company. There are lots of books on how to build a company, how to, product marketing, and, lots of marketing how-to books. But my goal for this book was to make it easy and short and get kind of, just have the essence of what I need to know as a founder. Tell me now what I need so I can put it to use immediately. And the book features 8 founder stories. So I spent 2 years actually interviewing some amazing founders, and 8 of them found their way into the book. In addition, a couple others I quoted in the book. I've got quotes from all the people I've been following for years. And also then there's my process, which is my build a brand process, which I've developed over 20 some years. And so there are exercises based on that process at the end of each chapter. And so it's a really skinny book, but it's got a lot of meat to it. And it was just such a fun project to do, and got to hear some really amazing stories from a child entrepreneur who became a CNN hero. I mean, it's just incredible. And then one of them is somebody who is now a really well-known entrepreneur who was not when I interviewed him 4 years ago, who was just kind of starting his company. So I like to think I had a little teeny tiny part. Yeah, he doesn't need any help from me, but yeah, so it's just been really great. And then interspersed throughout the book is also what I'm hoping are going to be opportunities for people to change their minds around marketing, because so many people think that marketing is something I'll get to eventually. And what I'm saying is, if you don't get to it from the beginning, you really won't. And by the time you get to it, you will have lost a lot of time. So in my experience, what I found is 3 to 5 years. That's that's when companies typically hit the wall, and all of a sudden they realize, oh, nobody really knows what we do, and our name doesn't really fit. And our salespeople are really having trouble cross-selling because they first have to spend like hours explaining what our basic business is, and nobody can really explain it or articulate it, or we can't communicate it. And also we're getting a lot of tire kickers. We're not getting our best clients. So the book is really meant to break that process down, because in my view, what I have found is in that first year of business, it's like a 3-step process. You need to, one, identify who you are and also who you're not. That's a big one for founders. Like, you have to let go of 99% of stuff so you can focus on the 1% that's really who you are.
Yeah, and I think that process took us 3 years.
Right, and I can do that in 4 weeks.
Yep.
Right. So and it took me 20 years to come up with a process that I can do in 4 weeks. So that's the first step. And then the second step is to identify your ideal client, ideal customer. And the reason you want to do that is because messaging is based on who you're talking to.
Yep.
So what tends to happen is, because you haven't done that work of really identifying who your ideal client is, you end up messaging to generic people, and therefore you're really not speaking to anyone. I always say, if you speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one. And then the last piece, of course, is developing the messaging. And the messaging that I help my founders create is really targeted to that customer, because the idea is, and then it's integrated, of course, into your website, social media feeds. But when you land on a homepage, what tends to happen is you get bombarded by all this content, none of which matters to you. So I always say there's only 2 things that I want to know when I land on a homepage. Why am I here? And why should I care? You got 6 seconds. 6 seconds to engage me, or I'm gone. I don't come back. I don't tell anyone about you. And that's the missed opportunity.
That's a big 6 seconds is quick. That's a really big deal. Would you say that then home pages is one of the biggest mistakes that people are making? They don't realize it's a mistake. Okay.
Absolutely. Because so one of the things I talk about in my book is that your homepage is actually your brand's front door. Right. And so you think about your front door, unless you're a hoarder and there are other issues, most people do not put all the contents of their bedroom, furniture, their clothing, their kitchen appliances. You don't put all that outside your front door. But yet, when people create their homepage, what they often do is they put all this stuff. It's like, I don't care that you're a great company to work with. How does that help me? Right. I don't want to know about your latest hire. I don't want to know about, what a great company you are. You've been voted #1 company to work for in, Illinois or wherever. It doesn't matter to me unless you're connecting that with something that matters to me, which is, what do I get by working with you? So a big part of my work when I work with founders is to help them clean up their homepage. And a lot of times it's not that you have great content. It's just either it's in the wrong place or it's not easily found. The rule of thumb is 3 clicks and I'm gone. So you need to be able to find the information that you want to know about in 3 clicks.
Okay.
So what's happened over the last few years, what I have found is a lot of people put all the information on their homepage. And that's actually almost worse than not putting anything on there, because now it's just, I'm overwhelmed. So what you really want is you want to walk somebody through an experience. And what I do is I also help you create an online experience that mirrors a little bit, gives you a taste of what it's like to work with you.
Okay. I like that a lot. I think that very often, especially founders who we're told to look to as examples are not necessarily the companies that we want to be. They just also happen to be entrepreneurial companies. And so we get lost in the sauce of creation because there's so much, and we're given inappropriate, like I remember when we were first starting, somebody and we were doing a lot of consultancy at the time. And so somebody gave me this, said you should really model after this person who had completely different value systems than us. But I didn't really recognize that because I didn't really know who we were yet. And so it was all done kind of in an awkward order. If we had just not in a certain way paid attention to these other folks who were not even in our space, it would have been a lot cleaner.
It's funny that you say that, because a big thing that I hear a lot of, well, we don't need marketing because we get referrals. And here's the thing about referrals. Referrals are only as good as the people who refer you.
Yeah.
Now, if you haven't spent the time to really identify your ideal client, you get referrals that really aren't a good fit. Or the other thing I've seen people do is they constantly shift their business to address a new customer's need.
We did
Because
that way too much. Yep.
Way too much. And that's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And as a communications vehicle, what it's really telling the world is you don't know who you are.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that's something that feels like you can see that in other people. But for you, it's just like, well, I can do that. Why wouldn't I? And it feels counterintuitive when you're a desperate founder trying very hard to keep the lights on.
Exactly.
It feels counterintuitive, but it's not, because it's about setting you up for much longer term success.
And here's the thing, this is what I know. And I know this because I work with dozens of founders. Actually, I have to figure out how many. It's gotta be at least close to 100 by now. But in any case, here's what I find is that we're so afraid of what we lose that we lose sight of what we gain, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, taking an extra month, in my case, working with me, it's a month of time. In that month, I can help you clarify who that customer is. I can also help you to let go of the things that really aren't, because one of the first things I ask somebody, when they've been around for a while, because a lot of times I do work with people who are now at the 3 to 5 year mark. Like I said, that's anecdotally, I've seen this over 20 plus years. This is what happens. At that point, all of a sudden, we're like, oh, we really need to figure this out. So one of the things I always ask them is, what do you want to do? What do you love doing? Right? It's almost like they're afraid to ask themselves that question. And what happens, amazingly, is if you clarify that customer and you really develop messaging that speaks to them, well, two things happen. One is they land on your homepage and they think, oh my God, I found somebody who really gets me. The second thing that happens is you get more of them. And now the referral piece makes sense. But it feels like somehow you don't have time. But you know how they say you always have time you don't have time to do it right the first time, but you always have time to fix it, right?
Yeah.
So my goal really with my book and with my consulting practice is to help people get it right the first time, so they can focus on scaling their business and not constantly having to like reimagine, because the reality is your core value is not going to change.
Yeah.
The name might change. That's actually a whole chapter in my book is on identity. And one of the things I find is people don't give any thought to the name. It's almost like, oh yeah, we'll just call ourselves, XYZ company. And guess what? It's really hard to scale if you don't have the right name. I'll ask you a question here. Kristen, can you tell me what Nike's original name was?
Oh, I knew it for a trivia question once, and it's gone out of my brain. I do not remember.
The reason you don't remember the name is because it's completely forgettable. And by the way, just FYI, they had this name for 10 years. Blue Ribbon Sports was their original name, which it makes sense in a way if you think about, well, if we're building a company where athletes who win races, or who are really high level athletes, blue ribbons are great for county fairs. But can you imagine an Olympian wearing merchandise with Blue Ribbon Sports? So here's the thing, and Nike was actually the name of their waffle shoe, their breakout shoe. And that was the name of the product. And then they realized, well, they didn't realize, they hired somebody who helped them realize. And Scott Bedbury is responsible for really rebranding Nike and taking them through the stratosphere, really. And it's interesting to me how so few people really think about their name. And so it's really, to me, Nike is the perfect example of how the right name can really build an empire.
Yeah, for sure. My brain's going in a million directions. I have so many questions, but I think the first one that keeps popping up is, what about talking to any of these people? Was there anything that surprised you?
Oh, that's a great question. I tell you one thing that surprised me, pleasantly surprised me, is how every single one of them reinforced everything I say about in the book.
That's
they all pretty
convenient
much
and
said,
wonderful.
It was amazing. They basically all say the same thing. I wish I'd known this, right, when I started my company. I wish that we had taken the time. Like one story in particular, I remember, I wish we had taken the time. We never took the time to figure out who our customer was. And so we built an entire company based on the wrong customer, thinking, right, that this is who we needed to get. Yeah. And by the time we figured it out, it was too late and we closed our company. So, research. So, this all kind of falls under marketing research. And people think, again, back to your point about, oh, we just want to get the light, we want to keep the lights on, we want to get moving. But what if instead you could take a breath and think about all the time you spend to find an attorney, to find an IT firm, to register your name, your LLC, your, whatever it is. You're willing to spend the time for that. Why aren't people willing to spend the time to establish their brand before they start to communicate it? Why do they think, right? This is a big part of this book too, is why do they think there's somehow magically things are going to change? Because they don't magically change.
They do not, but we all want them to. And yeah, right. It's so often too, I mean, especially founders, the idea is what drives people.
Right.
And that's beautiful. And we tend to think that's enough, that the idea comes with all this other stuff you're talking about, but it doesn't. And from what I hear as a founder from other folks, like that's one of the common things, especially people around my age and younger, that we thought the idea would carry it. And that it does and it doesn't.
Well, what you're describing is something else I describe in my book, which is the lone genius myth. Because, Zuckerberg, right? You've got Elon Musk. And the reason that we believe that is because they've become the face of the company.
Yeah.
And that's that's really a problem in my view, because they didn't build this company alone. No. There are lots and lots of people who helped them. And the fact that, that their face, their name is what we, when we think of Tesla, we think Elon Musk. We don't think about the hundreds of people and his advisory board and all the people who put in nights, weekends, who put their blood, sweat, and tears into making it what it is. And the flip side of that, of the lone genius myth, is that they tend to build toxic workplaces.
It's so funny as you say that. As we're talking right now, I'm reading, I think it's $1 billion, something I can't remember, but it's the story of Adam Newman at WeWork. And essentially the incredible rise and fall of WeWork. Oh, yeah. And that's what he did. He built an incredibly toxic culture. That's right. That they are now attempting to claw their way out of as we talk in June of 21. And who knows if they will or not, because that was he was.
Well, and there's there's so many examples of that.
Yeah, Elizabeth Theranos. Yeah.
So what happens is, that's what it looks like when you want the quick fix, when you want you take the quickest path to success. You forget that people are really your biggest asset, the culture that you build. And so we go back to, I talk also about culture and building a sustainable culture. And that really comes from, again, if you follow these tenets of lean marketing, which is really what the book is focused on, that's what's going to help you build a sustainable culture. Because when you're vision focused, when you understand very clearly your core value, when you bring in people who are aligned with those values, your chances of success are so much higher. And just by the way, the number 3 reason why startups fail is because they have the wrong team.
I think that is a perfect place to put a pin in this conversation, because we will explore that again at a later time, because there's really, in some of what you're saying, there's internal and external branding and they have to match. And so often people don't, and that leads to problems on both ends. So this has been utterly fascinating. Thank you so much for joining me. Is there any parting words of wisdom you'd love to give our audience before we say goodbye?
Oh, that's a big question. I would say that don't be afraid of letting go of things that don't suit your company. Don't be afraid to leave people out, because the people you invite, the people who come into your company, are going to be so much better. Because there's a reason why you have to let people go, because they don't fit. You're not going to be a solution for everyone. So find the people who really value what you do and go look for them.
I absolutely adore that. Thank you so much. If you also adored that, please give this video a thumbs up. I know it sounds lame, but the YouTube algorithm really likes it. If you like these kind of conversations, you'll probably like the rest of my channel. So hit subscribe and ring that bell so that you don't miss any incredible content. I have conversations like this all the time here in this series. And then my business partner, Dr. Aaron, and I have conversations a lot like this in a lot of other contexts across the channel. And if you want to get in touch with Orly and buy her book, which you should, all of the links to do that are going to be below. And we will make sure that there is no difficulty in being able to engage with her and her work. Orly, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen. This was really fun.
It has been a joy of mine as well. Friends and neighbors, we will see you next time on Welcome to My World.